Good morning or good afternoon, attendees, wherever you are calling in for this webinar today. Hope everybody has had a great early fall week, and appreciate everybody's interest in taking out some time in their days to listen to Robin Miller, Jon Brooks-Fox from BlueCross, BlueShield share as part of our best practice series some knowledge, experience, and perspectives regarding aligning recognition with culture and engagement, specifically at BlueCross, BlueShield, North Carolina. My name is Michael Levy. I am the CEO of Online Rewards. I'm going to moderate today's session, but will not be talking or giving a sales pitch. Our interest is to share with HR professionals some of the knowledge and expertise that some of the HR leaders that we've worked with have gleaned and developed, some as a result of their work with Online Rewards, some as a result of the work that they've done on their own. I will do a brief introduction just to set the scene in terms of the work that we had done with BlueCross, BlueShield, and then I will quickly hand it over to Robin and Jon to let them share with you their learning and expertise. Very briefly about the business, fair enough. We are in the business of building employee engagement programs, corporate and government clients. We've been building these since 2002. We have offices in Dallas and Cincinnati. We have some 400 plus programs in operation, varied styles, similar to what some similar to what you're seeing, we'll see and learn about today, others vastly different. The interesting thing about what we do as a business and what you're going to see has been the experience with BlueCross, BlueShield is culture and the concept of engagement is very personalized. Of the 400 programs that we have in operation, while granted there are similarities, there are more often differences than there are similarities in the cultures of these organizations and how they want to go about creating engagement. It's a buzzword of the time. The trick in making these sort of programs successful is ultimately about how do we, within a given company situation, make employees feel more engaged, more valued, more interested in helping solve the day-to-day problems, no matter what part of the organization they may operate in. And how does one do that, not only given very diversified employee populations generationally, financially, compensation, role, responsibility, background, culture, etc., but how do you do that given the cultures of organizations vary so dramatically depending upon the history and the leadership of those organizations? To be successful, it's not as simple as calling up vendor A and say, install rewards program here and give gift card. To really get to the crux of people's and organizations' culture, one must look a little bit more holistically and a little bit more deeply in terms of how do we make it work within a given organization? How do we reflect the culture? How do we make it credible and relevant? How do we make it feel like the program is being created from inside the company and not some third-party software that we've paid a company to buy and install? So that's our business, Online Rewards, working with companies to help create a program that is meaningful for a given employee population and that fits considering the culture and budget and financial and operational and technological perspectives of any given organization. So with that, I'd like to introduce the two speakers, again, thanking Robin and Jon very much for taking time out and being open to share their experiences and their knowledge and expertise. By way of brief background, Robin Miller is the Vice President of People Strategies for BlueCross BlueShield of North Carolina. She's spent 25 years in the field of human resources in both the public and private sectors. Robin joined BlueCross BlueShield North Carolina in '94 in the staffing area and has held increasingly responsible positions in talent management and HR business partnerships. Robin leads the areas of organizational development, performance management, succession management, diversity and work-life programs. Most recently, she's been responsible for developing programs to build a diverse talent pipeline for succession through programs with summer interns, college hires, and accelerated development for mid-level, senior-level leaders. She works with her team to develop a strong workplace culture of creativity, collaboration, caring, commitment. Joining Robin is Jon Brooks-Fox, Workforce Engagement Specialist. Jon Brooks-Fox is a Workforce Engagement Specialist in HR at BlueCross BlueShield North Carolina. She's been with the company since 2007 and has served in numerous roles across the company before landing her dream job in the Office of Diversity and Work Life. Current role, Jon is responsible for supporting the BlueCross BlueShield mission of strategic development and promotion of effective work-life integration offerings for the internal workforce. And as a result of Jon and Robin's efforts, and of course others at BlueCross BlueShield North Carolina, the company has been awarded 2014 Work-Life Seal of Distinction, presented by World at Work's Alliance for Work-Life Progress. In addition, BlueCross BlueShield North Carolina has been awarded by Capital Associated Industries, which is a specialist association supporting HR, in 2013 for the props program that Robin and Jon are about to present. So thanks again, Robin and Jon, for taking the time out. In terms of format, we will certainly welcome some questions. We're expecting the presentation to last 30-40 minutes, and then we'll leave time aside if there's questions. If you'd like to submit questions during the presentation, feel free to do so. You should be seeing on your screens a chat box. If you type those messages there, I'll curate them and get them across to Robin and Jon at the question and answer set time, and they can then talk through. So thanks everybody. We hope you enjoy it and certainly get some benefit from it. Over to you, Robin and Jon.
Great. Well, thank you and so much. We appreciate having the opportunity to share with you a little bit about our program, and hopefully you take away from it a way that you might be able to implement something similar for whatever purpose you are trying to drive in your organization. So again, my name is Robin Miller, so you'll hear my voice as well as
Jon Brooks-Fox. Welcome everybody. We're super happy to be here. Super glad that you're joining us. We have lots in store to share, so feel free to jump in as you need to.
Good. So first what we want to do, just to provide you some context about who we are, BlueCross BlueShield of North Carolina is the largest health insurer in North Carolina. We serve over 3.8 million customers. We are a not-for-profit but fully taxed organization, and our location is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We have actually now over 4,700 employees because that number is accelerating pretty quickly, but a fairly large operation here in BlueCross in North Carolina. And as Michael mentioned, we are very proud of the fact that we have been recognized for the workplace culture that we create here, and we were just once again nominated and awarded the top 100 best companies for working mothers for AARP, and as Michael mentioned, for the Alliance for Work-Life Progress. So very proud of the work that we've done here, and that's why we're so excited to share with you that work today. So I want to first start with really telling you our story. and why we created the program that we've created. And as I mentioned, really what you need to always be thinking about is what is it that you're trying to achieve, and then really these tools like the relationship we have with online rewards is a way to get us there. So I'll tell you a little bit about our story, how we got to where we are today. Back in 2011, our current CEO started in that role, and I'm sure since everybody reads the paper and knows what we've gone through with the Affordable Care Act, the healthcare environment was changing very rapidly. So one of the things that our CEO talked about and very much fell to our HR department to think about how to drive was he wanted his legacy to be changing the culture of the organization. We have been a very successful company for over 80 years, so it really had nothing to do with not performing, but we did see that the landscape was changing, and we needed a way to make sure that we could clarify what that culture is for our employees, and then we needed a way to be able to reinforce that culture. So as some of you might have remembered in Michael's introduction of me, he talked about 4 words about collaboration and creativity and commitment and caring, and those are the 4 foundational attributes that you're going to see in this program because they define our culture, and that's really what this whole story is about. So when we set out in 2011 to look at how do we reinforce the culture, what we wanted to do was look at what programs did we have in place and what were they reinforcing. So we knew that we wanted to, every organization may have mini microcultures that exist, and what we wanted to do was pull that together at what we call the enterprise level and be able to get everybody on the same page and really drive things in a very organized and concise way. So when we rolled out our new culture, having those 4 foundational C's that I just mentioned, what we looked at was, were those things, did we have a way of recognizing people consistently across the organization? And what we wanted to also do was having a way to track that. So even if that was happening, we didn't know how well that was happening, how much did it cost us to deliver on that, were we putting the resources in the right place? So we needed a program that not only was being able to be driven consistently, but that we could track. And as Michael mentioned, you obviously always want to look at financial performance. So what we did was we looked at and went out in the organization, as I said, to see what cultures existed. We worked with our CFO to say, if we looked at the budgets and the money that was being spent on recognition, what we proposed was, could we consolidate that in HR and really be able to manage the effectiveness of driving that culture? So we said that we would be cost neutral. If not, we believed that we could run a better program for less money than what was going on in individual departments. So that was kind of our business case. We also knew that as our organization was changing, we really were becoming a much more mobile workforce. And the recognition program that we had in place prior to that was a more traditional kind of paper, print out something, we gave out pins. But if people weren't in the same work location to see those posted on the wall or to see somebody having a pin, how would we be able to drive that and also be able to reinforce that mobility we were trying to drive in our workplace? So we knew that we needed a program that not only built consistency, again, was going to be cost neutral or less than that, but also a program that people could access from wherever and could share it with any other peer. So one of the other things that you'll see in our program was we were trying to build empowerment and the ability for peers to recognize each other without having to go through a gatekeeper. So we have that built into the program, as well as the recognition being visible to an employee's manager. So we'll take you through what some of the pieces to the program looked like. And as I mentioned before, this was the start of our relationship with Online Rewards, looking for a solution as to how we could deliver all of those things that we just talked about. Probably the biggest thing, and this I would say in anything that any of you do in your organizations, it really needs to be something that the senior leadership in your organization is bought into and drives. We were very fortunate that our CEO, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, really believed that changing the culture of the organization was going to be his legacy. So all of these tools and things that we wanted to do, he was very engaged in. But one of the first things that he did was produced a video that talked about and kicked off this program that we call Props, and talked about how to use it. The other thing that we did, which I think was very effective, is the first thing that our CEO did was he awarded everybody props in the organization. The purpose for doing that was so that people understood the program. He was saying that he was going to be a participant in it too, so it doesn't matter what level you are in the organization, if you're a people leader, individual contributor, this is an all-in program. And we named our program, as I said, PROPS, which stands for Proper Recognition of Personal Success. So a catchy name, and you'll see that we've got that as our kind of branded program. But again, any program that you're going to roll out to the organization, for it really to take root, you have to have the buy-in from the leadership of the organization. HR was really the vehicle for designing, developing the program, and we maintain it, but it has to be owned by the organization. We couldn't have done this without the support of over 4,700 employees. And John will talk about a little bit later on the metrics around, we measure utilization, givers as well as receivers, what people are being recognized for. So you'll see that it really is very metric driven. So one of the other things, and again, this is just showing you the branding that we've done, that we think is really impactful is that we gather up the props that are given in any given month and look at, based on what we're really trying to drive, so we read through all of those props awards, and we might see that, wow, it looks like people really understand the competency of caring, but maybe not so much around being creative. So what we'll do is we'll do a story. So we look at all the props, and then we pick a prop standout. We write a story, we take a picture, and we put it on our intranet site for all employees to see, and we tell that story of what that individual did to be recognized for that particular cultural attribute. And what we've learned is that the way people really kind of understand and internalize something is if they see it through stories. So when we want to show, or kind of we want to drive home that we want employees to also recognize leaders, as well as leaders recognizing employees, we'll find a prop standout that does that, and instead of us just saying it, we tell that story. One of the things that you'll see here is, as I mentioned, we first started this in 2011, and in 2014, actually just about two or 3 months ago, we rolled out a new corporate strategy, and along with that, we said we wanted to refresh our culture. So we still have as the foundation the 4 cultural attributes, and our program is still the same, but if you see underneath where it says forward culture, we've revised our culture to be under the umbrella of what we call Forward Now, and forward culture is one of the things that we drive, and we do that through the PROPS program. So what we're trying to show you here is you need to keep things refreshed, and it continues to become almost a banner for whatever it is that you're trying to drive. So as our culture shifting, we're refreshing and shifting our PROPS program, but it's still, at its foundation is doing the same thing for us. Okay, so what you see here again, when I was talking about our culture, what you see here is we define our culture, again, by those 4 C's, but we have them anchored around what we call our culture compass. And again, you have to decide what it is that you're trying to drive, but what we were trying to drive into the culture of the organization is that we needed to be kind of nimble and kind of pivot. So even though there's a compass, what you notice is that there is no due north. So what we said is that all of the points of the compass are exactly the same, and we can tilt this compass based on what it is that we need to be driving in our culture at any given time to meet our business needs. So if we felt like we needed to drive home accountability, for instance, which you see as that first word beside committed, we would be tilting in that direction, and we would align things like our prop standout, all of those things. We'd be telling more stories about accountability because we're trying to get people to understand what that is. So we use this as a way to kind of visualize for our employees all of the things that are important that we need to see in our culture, and we stress different points around that compass based on what we're trying to reinforce. Here's an example of what one of the props standouts looks like, and again, we really use it as the backdrop for engaging employees. It's a very simple program to use. As I talked about, you can use it from anywhere, from a mobile device. So we really make it easy to use. We have seen, we do a culture and engagement survey every 2 years. We just completed it and saw that, once again, we tied this program to the employee engagement section of that survey and see that we still are performing very strong and believe that a good part of that is really driven by this program. Okay, so why we're so proud, and I think that this is one of those things that really, I would say we were even kind of blown away by, and Jon is shaking her head. We rolled it out, and we, we were kind of looking for that guidance from online rewards to tell us what we could expect in terms of how many people would use it, what we would expect in terms of utilization of giving, redemption, and what we noticed was that this was pretty amazing. In the first year of our props program, 97% of our employees, when they were asked about if they felt more valued, they responded that they did. 84% of them had been recognized more than 4 times, and 52% of them were recognized by their leaders. And that is really powerful in the first year to actually move engagement in the way that people felt about the program. So one of the things that I want to just kind of step back and talk about is the way that we did this is that we give all of our employees points that are in their bank. We refresh it every quarter, and they can give it out to whoever they choose to give it out to. Our HR department sees them, reads them, but we are not the gatekeeper. What we try to do by, again, reading them is know, are we hitting home about a particular cultural attribute, but we are not the gatekeeper. Your manager doesn't sign off on it. If you feel like you want to give somebody props for being great and remembering, that you had a really rough day and brought you, donuts in the morning, okay, that's not exactly what we're shooting for, but at least you're using the program. So we don't pass any judgment on it. So everybody has a bank that they can use, so they give props, and they get a certificate that they can print out. We'll show you a little bit more of what that looks like later. And then through the online rewards platform, they're able to save whatever their points are and redeem those points for whatever they choose to redeem them for. So it's very employee driven. Whatever's important to them is what they can redeem those points for. And I think that that's very powerful. Go ahead, John.
You know what, I'm looking at this slide, and I really want to draw your attention to that last bullet where it says 52% of employees recognize their leaders. So when we're talking about the impact of this program on the first year, you're now watching the culture shift take place right there in front of you with the numbers that are coming from the survey. This would mean that employees, instead of waiting for their manager to say, hey, you did a great job, they're reaching out to their manager and saying, hey, manager, hey, boss, you are doing fantastic. Thank you so much for the support. Thanks for the encouragement. Thanks for being committed to my overall success. And I have to tell you, on the day-to-day, I'm probably one of the people that touches the program the most. So being able to thumb through what employees are recognizing each other for is probably one of those parts of my job that I find most delightful. Sometimes it feels like I'm kind of eye-spying on private thoughts, because certainly we all know that recognition is a personal component. What if I just said thanks a lot, you may not feel the same as if I'm able to describe a little bit more how I thought that you were caring, committed, collaborative, or creative with regard to solutioning something, and basically driving our culture forward. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, because that was a big aha moment for us, and that was with the other recognition programs that we had in place before. This wasn't an option. You would have to wait for your manager or someone on kind of in a hierarchical kind of process to be able to give you recognition. But this way, the employees were definitely empowered to be able to say, hey, boss, you're doing fantastic.
Yes, and leaders need as much reinforcement and recognition as everyone else does. So it feels really good when, especially when your employee is recognizing you in that way. Okay, so this is again a continuation of some of our measurement. So as I mentioned before, we do an employee and culture survey every 2 years. We started it back in 2010. So we had a baseline that was prior to us starting this program, and we just actually completed the survey and just looked at the results about a month ago for the 2014 results. And what is really exciting is when you look at the movement, our employee engagement went from 36% to 62%. So when you look at that kind of movement in employee engagement, we attributed quite a bit of it to this particular program. Team orientation went from 50 to 74%. And empowerment went from 39 to 67%. So here, again, as John mentioned, because there's no gatekeeper in the program, what we were really trying to drive is that employees own this program. So the recognition is up, sideways, down, however people want to, give that recognition, we let them do it. So initially there was concern about, well, who's making sure that these things are being given for the right reason? And what we said is, we can look at them and we can, again, through our stories, drive what we would like to see. But if somebody feels that that's important and thought enough to give props for whatever that reason is, we're moving in the right direction. So these scores were really phenomenal. For those of you who work with employee engagement, you know how difficult it is to move anything on the employee engagement needle, because that is really, slow movement over time, any culture work you do. So this is really pretty dramatic. With this part of it, I'm going to just turn this over to John, since, as she said, she works really close with this program, and she is extremely proud of where we've taken it to. So I'm going to let her go through this part of the program.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think so far, I think you have the idea of our journey. I think you have a good gauge of the environment that our CEO really wanted us to have to be able to accomplish our goals. His mission was very, very clear when he started as CEO, and that was the task that he gave to HR is, how are we going to do all this? And I thought that was one of the most exciting parts of this adventure, if you will, because what it is a part of self-discovery, and it also is a part of creating a legacy for our CEO and for our company. And I have to say for our employees as well. I think Michael mentioned that I had been at BlueCross for 7 years. So I had been here before the CEO and now, of course, working with the CEO. So it's exciting to watch as it unveils. I wanted to put this slide in here because at one point, and I almost want to joke and say that in July, the end of July, we were at about 15,000 props awarded since the inception of the program. I'm happy to report that I checked hot off the presses just before we came to visit you, and we have 171,000 props that have been given since the beginning of the program. So even from July to now, you're noticing that those numbers are growing astronomically. And what we can attest that to is that we do a lot of communication with regards to the program. Robin mentioned how we talk about testimonials, how we highlight folks. One of my favorite things to tell people is I want you to catch somebody doing good. Find those folks that are doing things that are keeping our business moving forward. They may not be noticeable to everyone around them, but the program, the way that it's set up, is actually a great way to tell other people about how well you're doing. So for instance, I give you this example on the bottom. It happens to be one of my personal props that I'm sharing with you. And it's talking about something along the lines of our Giving Works campaign. I think we had a March of Dime campaign and how I helped put that together. Now this is awesome because not only do I get to feel that someone appreciates my efforts or my commitment, what I thought was fantastic is my boss is aware at the exact same time that I'm notified, my boss is notified too. So no longer are the days where I have to say, hey, boss, these are the 15 fantastic things I've been doing, but look here, someone else is telling it. It's a much different conversation. There's something awfully fantastic about when I receive props, and pretty shortly thereafter, I'll have my boss will send me a return message from the props and say, way to go. So it just keeps the morale up, and I think one by one we're reaching out to all the employees. What I thought was also interesting to let you know when we talk about engagement is that 98% of our employees have received at least one award during the past year. Now, somebody might say, well, you know what, that's really not that big a deal. But imagine when we had in a former system, would everybody be recognized all at the same time? Is that how the program works? So the fact that we're reaching people at that level is where I feel like it's almost like a spider web. We're reaching out to all the different areas. And I think Robin had mentioned even with our work from home employees, folks often think that if you're not here in the main campus that you're out of sight, out of mind. Well, that's not true with this program. This is a fine tool to reach out to those employees and keep them engaged and to be able to highlight and make notice of the successes that they're doing along the way. Right now we have, I think Robin was saying, we have just over 4,700 employees. I checked before we came in, and there's 4,686 that are actually registered in the program. So it's a pretty quick turnaround as far as employees that once they're hired or they get started with their regular work schedule and their training, that one of the first things they do is to give props. And oftentimes it's probably around 89% of them will give props within their first 90 days. So it's a program that people go to very, very quickly. We also talk about, I think at the top of the slide it says employees are still engaged. What's also nice is that when you're walking in the hallways, when you are talking to other people, you'll oftentimes overhear folks talking about how committed someone was or how caring that was. And so that is actually part of our vernacular. We're using it everywhere we're going. And we want to make sure that we're able to catch people doing good. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about kind of how we did it and how you can too. And then we'll go into a little bit more of the metrics of our particular program just to share them with you. Robin talked a little bit about this too. Make sure you really have a good understanding of what you want to recognize with your company. Oftentimes folks want to do, safety records or the time to resolve calls or maybe sales. Those things certainly are things that you could actually create a recognition program around. I'm sure Online Rewards would be happy to help you create that. But the trick is, and something that we think that made a big difference for us, is to be able to put some of that extra elbow grease in and to really kind of discern what it is we wanted to drive. And for us, it was certainly culture. The other thing is, and Robin mentioned this too about as far as our CEO and having his full support. And it wasn't something that he did the video and then we never heard from him again. He is a super user of our props program. He gets props, he gives props. There's no delay in a time for him to be able to do that. The other thing is this is enterprise-wide too, so it makes a big difference when you're able to include every employee. And we're talking all the way from facilities, the mailroom, up to your CEO. Oftentimes for us that may not have been, for other companies that may not be the way your program is set up, but what difference does that make? How can you impact your employees by actually having everyone be able to participate in the exact same program? We also designed our program based on our corporate strategy and our direction and values. And Robin also tell you that we had started in one area, and then when we redefined our strategic direction, we modified the program. So the fact that it was adaptable was important to us, that we could actually make it so that it really was customized to BlueCross culture and not just something literally like out of the box. We talked about our partnership with Online Rewards. They definitely helped us be able to make it something where we can make it easy and simple for our employees. We had the benefit of having our internal brand folks that work over in our sales team to be able to create a lot of the images that you see, the ones that we've shown on some of the slides before. So that was heavy lifting we did before we were actually at a place where we wanted to go ahead and lift up a recognition program. And that actually makes it that much more kind of our signature program because it was something that was created internally and then Online Rewards figured out how to make it work for us. Something else you see on the bottom is that round circle where it says recognize, reward, redeem. That is a cycle that we've created, and we've realized it's kind of the natural life cycle of the program. We want to encourage you to recognize people and catch them doing good. You want to reward them by sending them prompts. But then that last part that oftentimes is overlooked is that redemption part. You have been a fantastic employee. Why shouldn't you go to our catalog, which is on Online Rewards, and be able to sort out exactly what you want? Now, it's not the difference in just getting a regular old gift card. You get to pick a gift card if you want to. You get to pick jewelry. You get to pick a purse. You get to pick baby clothes. I have seen all kinds of fantastic redemptions, but again, it's customizable, and I think the idea that it's personal to the employee, they're getting what they want with their props points. This is just a glimpse at what the program looks like since we've had the beginning of the program. You'll see this is actually utilization. So you'll see that at the end of Q4, that's always a great time where we have high utilization. Oftentimes that means a lot of employees are feeling very, very kind to each other. So they're giving props of every sort to say you're doing a great job and kind of ending the year with that. And then you'll notice that it gets a little slump in Q2. We're always trying to figure out why that happens, but if you look to the right of the chart, it happened again in Q2 of this year as well. So that seems to be the natural progression for how it works internally for us. And it's nice that it's not at like 100% because that makes it difficult to be able to budget and to really manage it effectively. So we feel like we're in the sweet spot of figuring out how that is. You'll also notice that there's two different numbers on this. So the top blue line is actually management's utilization, which is good that it's always higher than the individual contributor, which probably seems pretty logical. That's what you would think, is that managers is probably part of their function to recognize their team. But you notice that there's a nice correlation with that red line of individual contributors. They're certainly following their manager's lead. Another part that I love about the program is that, we're all working, trying to, push forward and meet our goals. But it's really nice that this program is actually able to inspire and support employees as they are going through heavy business deliverables. And that's something else we're terribly proud of. Some of the things that have helped the PROPS program blend with our culture here. So we talked about kind of the 4 C's, those tenets of how we do business. These are some examples of where we've connected with other areas of the business, so whether it's our benefits team, sales and marketing, our employee networks, and also our community relations team. When we've made these partnerships, it has really driven utilization, almost want to say off the charts. I think on the next slide, it really gives you a good visual of how it actually works. So one of the things that we're super excited about is that we've partnered with community relations, and with that, when we have different campaigns throughout the year, we're actually, employees are able to donate or redeem their points to make a charitable donation. And the good part is they can pick any charity they want. As long as it's a 501c3 charity, they're able to donate their props points as if it were cash, right? Because all the props points have a cash value to it. Even though it's only a few cents, it's the idea that it's something that employees can do without getting proper, or I guess getting approval from anyone else. So you'll notice in Q1, that was the first time that we actually aligned our program with an initiative. And with that, we actually were doing it with, I think it was the March of Dimes at that point. And then Q2, we actually aligned it with the Susan G. Komen and the Walk for a Cure. So that was there. And then in Q3, we opened it wide open by letting employees pick, again, any 501c3, and basically having with our internal Giving Works campaign, they were able to donate $23,000. That's exciting for us, and it was exciting that it definitely empowered employees to be able to give as they saw fit They were redeeming their own points that people had given them based on their good efforts, and now they could actually give them back out. So kind of like that pay it forward theory is one of the things that we're proud of as well. Some other communication pieces that I'm hopeful will be helpful is that we talk about how to really celebrate successes along the way. Robin mentioned that we do testimonials, and this is just a snapshot of one of those, the smaller ones, I say the shorter ones. And what's lovely about this is we get to get the two people that were together. Some of these folks have never met in person before because they may be in different work locations, and we're able to highlight maybe even an internal program at some of those instances, but also being able to just say how somebody went above and beyond and kind of show you the model for what that looks like. On this slide, you have other examples, and it's fun when I show this slide because when I show it internally, folks get to giggling because this actually, I think in the upper left-hand corner, that is our facilities team, part of our facilities team. And people say, well, how do they get to be the spotlight? Well, they do things with such ease and grace, and they're professional and all those other fantastic things, but they actually drive our business forward with the way that they help us set up our leadership team meetings. And it sounds like a small thing, but they are fantastic. The one in the middle is actually one of an employee giving his boss props, and that's one of the ones that we thought was really, really special. Some other things that we do is we run polls sometimes on our internal website, and just to say, what are you doing with your props points? Are you holding them? Are you saving them up for something? What are you going to do with them? And that was actually helpful to know because at one point we weren't sure why people were holding their points, and it's almost like we had to create some communications and say, please spend them. Like, let that be part of that life cycle we're talking about. Oftentimes, too, you see on the right-hand side, that's one of the articles that we'll put out where we'll highlight some of the things that are in the redemption catalog, so that employees know that there is such a wide variety of things available in the catalog. Pretty much if you just want to do an advanced search, you can find all kinds of things in there. That other tile that says Give at the top is actually just a tile that runs, and it's actually just a visual that you'll see on the internet. You certainly can click on it and get more information, but it reminds people periodically to give points, especially when we talk about it being a quarterly program. You don't want your points to die. So pretty much if you don't spend the points that you're given at the beginning of the quarter, they will certainly disappear. They expire, and we get a brand new bunch of points. Now, the points that you get that you have earned, those you can save and add up to get you that Dooney & Burke purse or any other fun thing that you have your eye on, which a lot of employees do. They'll tell me quickly, John, I'm not spending my points, I'm saving them. I'm going to get me an iPod mini, and that's what I'm doing. So all these things are exciting, but they're all in the catalog, so easy to find. We talked before about how we redefined or refined our 4 Cs. These are examples of the certificates that you potentially could print out. A lot of our employees are phone-based, so they'll be in their cubicles or in their areas of work. They actually will print these out, and they'll put them around as reminders of how they have accomplished their job, and it actually is a motivating factor.
And one of the things I want to mention here, that you can actually see on your screen the words around what each of those foundational competencies are. And why that is so important is we actually, as John said, we revised it when we revised our corporate strategy and what we thought we needed to kind of really reinforce in our culture. So people see these words every time you select that you want to give somebody props for stay committed. It will always say that you are solution-driven and focused. So it is that repetition that, for all of you know that, again, you've got to communicate and communicate and communicate. So one of the ways we do this in a fun way is we communicate them through our props because we keep saying what it is that this behavior looks like, which I think is a really great and fun way. The other thing that I don't know that we actually have a slide for here, but what's really exciting is what you see when you get an email. So when somebody gives you props, it actually comes through to your email to say, you got props. And to get that, we hear from people at any level. Even our CEO will say, you see that, you're having a rough day, and you see that in your email. It is just so uplifting. And when you click it on, you actually see the certificate, and it actually has the verbiage of what the person gave you props for. So people get so excited when you say, oh, I got props, And then, as John mentioned, the leader gets props. So what they get, they notification, they get in their email box something that says your employee got props. And what's exciting there is you rush to click it on because you're not sure which one of your employees did, and it's really exciting. And as was mentioned by John, it makes it really easy for, say, me as a leader to forward it to that person to say, wow, that was really great. And in all honesty, sometimes I don't know. People are doing their work all the time. I may not know that they actually were doing that. So it is great feedback for me, and it gives me a chance, like on the go, to be able to forward that email and say, like, that was really great work, thank you. So it really is a great tool for reinforcement. And John will go over with you just kind of one last thing. We wanted you to see a little bit about the program itself, and John is the one that works with Online Rewards to look at what things are offered, what gifts are offered. So I'm going to turn that back over to her.
We certainly are listening to employees. I mean, this really is their program. So when they call me and say, John, I really wish we had gas cards, and I was thinking, we don't? Let me look. So I go thumb through, and immediately I reach out to Online Rewards, and time again, they are able to figure out ways to keep our employees satisfied with the program. There's been times where something has come off the catalog just because maybe it wasn't used in a while. I'll reach over, and they will say, John, it's back on the catalog. So the idea that it evolves, is not a stale program, that matters to our employees. We also added it this year to our total reward statement, too, which really put into perspective for employees there's a value to props. Some people think it may be light and fuzzy, but there's actually real business thinking going behind here. So the fact that we've been able to showcase that for employees makes a difference. This is also another example of how we do internal communications. So with the props program, you see in the center where it says Giving Works, that is our annual corporate giving campaign where we give to those 501c3s of our choice. We actually partnered with them, so we wanted to make sure we had that information available to you so that you could essentially pay it forward. You have received these props. If you're not buying something specific for yourself, a physical item, why not donate them? Also in the right-hand corner, you see that Death to 5K, that green footprint. That is actually one of our wellness programs. And at the bottom of that page, if I were able to scroll down, you'd see different items that were, and I'm using finger quotes, you would see wellness authorized or approved or recommended items that were available on the catalog. So it may be one of the things you wear on your arm when you go running, or a coupon for great sneakers. There's a variety of different things, but we actually picked things out of the catalog and drove employees there so that they could feel even more rewarded, again, for having those props points. So oftentimes, as we're kind of getting the screen moved backwards, one of the things that I think is most impressive about the job I have, and I think Michael alluded to my dream job, which I so agree with, it is wonderful to be able to get that feedback in real time from employees. So when we survey them, we get the kind of feedback that says that it makes it feel like they have the ability to affect for change, and they think it's better, that they like the idea of being able to recognize their coworkers, and it makes them feel as a team stronger than they were. And then also that it was the best that they've seen at the company, and that improves morale. We thought that that was something that really was impactful because you can see how it's working for folks. Another quick question I know that folks always ask me when we're talking out in the businesses, they want to talk about the metrics and how we're able to do that. So I think what's probably the best part, I think, one of the highlights of the program is as a manager, you're able to see those props in real time. So if you were to go into your account, you're actually able to see who on your team has gotten props and who's given props. So with that as an idea, what makes it really nice about it, though, is that you can see the frequency of it. We also can pull reports here in HR if you want to be able to say, hey, John, who are the top 5 givers on my team? Who are the top 5 recipients on my team? Oftentimes when people see the props data, it actually is a conversation starter. So if you need to, encourage an employee who hasn't received any for a while, maybe it's a good conversation starter there. Or if an employee is getting props in a variety of different areas, and that really demonstrates how they are enterprise-wide and not just necessarily working with your team. So there's a lot of information that you can pull from this data. Another thing that a lot of our leaders will do is when it comes time for that individual performance review, they'll pull that information and they'll say, oh, Okay, and it helps remind you of some of the fantastic things, big and small, that the employee has been doing in the meeting in between time. So I know that we want to make sure that we leave an opportunity for questions. I think we've gone through the bulk of the slides with pretty quick fashion, I have to say. So if you have questions, you are absolutely welcome to send them to the chat function, or we'll wait for that to see if there's any other questions specific that we can answer for you.
Well, Jon, Robin, thank you very much. That was very succinct and a lot of content, obviously, to cover in a short period of time. There are questions that have come in, and so I'll go through those sequentially and give Robin and Jon a chance to connect. But mechanically, I think one, online rewards will send out a follow-up email to thank everybody. And if there are some other questions that you'd like to direct to Robin or Jon separately, or some dialogue or conversations you'd like to have with them, they've certainly expressed a willingness and interest in doing so, particularly as I know there'll be quite a number of representatives from the other Blues on the call. So I'll help facilitate that. Two, there may be certainly an opportunity that we'd happily support to actually have a look at the program itself, because we're not actually seeing much from the program. So happy to do that at a later stage, and I would assume or hope that some people might be interested to see, how Jon, Robin, and the team at BlueCross had interpreted, this in terms of what does the program really look like, because again, this program is the props program, and it doesn't look like any of the other programs, and doesn't operate like other programs. For it makes sense within the BlueCross BlueShield construct and culture and operations and the way they work. It's not the same everywhere. So a couple of questions for Robin and Jon, no particular order, but as they came in. Felicia asking, what is the time frame for development and implementation to go through the process, as you mentioned, assessing, getting buy-in, etc.? So I think, again, this is the question saying, Felicia, if I read it correctly, if somebody wanted to actually, put a program like this in place, put aside the vendor role, but just the whole concept of an HR, focused program, what's the steps, what's the process, what's it been like, how long did it take? And again, we have limited time, and I've got some other questions, but that was the question from Felicia.
Sure, and I kind of chuckled when I saw this, because sometimes the buy-in part could take a really long time. I have to say, in this situation, what you have to do, is, as I talked about in the beginning, is really think about what it is, what's your business case, what's your reason for doing something, and how will you measure it? And I think if you have that, the buy-in is pretty quick. So in our situation, we really, I would say in the course of just a few months, maybe 3-4 months or so, we were able to go from us kind of deciding what it is we need to do, and again, this is without the engagement of online rewards, but just understanding we wanted to have a program, what would that look like, and selling it to our organization was pretty quick. But again, remember, in our situation, I wasn't asking for any additional funds. I was saying I believe I could manage the funds we're already spending more efficiently. So you tend to get buy-in much quicker when that's your business case. In terms of the time it took us to get it up and running with online rewards, I'd have to say that was really quick. They were ready to go, and from a technical perspective, really were able to get us up and running very quickly. It did take us a little bit of time for us to work through what we wanted the design of those certificates to look like, the site. I do think that's where online rewards was exceptionally helpful in helping us think through it and showing us other sites so that we would know what functionality we wanted. But you also have to go into it expecting that you go live, and then, as Michael knows, we would reach out and say, oh gosh, maybe we should have done this a little different, because you start to hear from employees, I had trouble finding this, or how do I do this? So initially we needed to go through a couple of rounds of change, but we had that built in, because we knew that as a new program, we wanted it to be personalized and work for our employees. So we got it up and running pretty quickly, and then kind of went through iterations of improvements to the program. So I hope that answers your question.
So another question from Gary. Gary asking about the engagement. Is it done on a 1 to 5 measuring scale or some other method? And was how you measured increase in engagement? Was the engagement survey done internally or by an external party? So some questions around the engagement.
Yeah, and that's a great question. We actually use an external partner for culture and engagement. So in that survey, they ask a lot of different questions. There's one quadrant, and the survey that we use, if anybody's familiar with it, is Denison. And so there's one quadrant that looks at employee engagement, kind of in that their whole kind of circumflex. Based on the percentile movement in that quadrant, that's how we are assessing the effectiveness of the PROPS program. So it isn't that we are asking directly about this program, it's general engagement, several questions that ask about how people feel about the company, how committed they are to their work, and that kind of gives us a percentile ranking. That's what we've been tracking.
Another question from Gary, I might answer this one about taxation. The IRS regards the provision of material gifts, whether monetary or like, as a taxable. It then becomes a policy question of the sponsoring company to determine the tax treatment rules. We've seen some clients true up the value of the awards in the manner in which they're ultimately saying the company will cover the tax costs. Others that say, no, the employee will pay the taxes, and we certainly then support the appropriate communications. Separately, and to answer that question, if people would like to follow up with me, we have some tax documentation that was created by a leading CPA firm, talks specifically about the options and alternatives that companies have for handling, the tax consequences of programs. Another question that I'll pass to you. Peg asks, how many points does your organization appropriate or put on for props, and what's the dollar cost? And have you found that actually working with somebody like Online Rewards produced the cost-neutral objective that you had in the first place, Robin? John, I'll pass that to you.
I think part of it for us, and like you said, being able to make it cost-neutral, was to figure out what that sweet spot was as far as how many points do we give to leaders versus how many to individual contributors. So for us, our leaders would get 4,500 points per quarter, and our individual contributors would get 1,200 props per quarter. And of course, the idea being that they only keep them for that quarter. So if they don't use them, they absolutely lose them. So imagine there's a great flurry of giving right towards the end of each of those quarters, because people sometimes even keep a list on their desk, like a little Post-it, and I've seen it many a time where they say, I want to give props to Joe and to Lisa, and they kind of make a list of things. So definitely helps in that sense. I think, was there more to the question? Something else?
Yeah, no, that's fine, and I'll let me jump in. And for everybody, when companies are talking about designing these programs, they shouldn't be concerned by the concept of, is it points or props or bucks or bonus, this or the other. That's all just funny money stuff that we're creating to create a situation and experience. What we're really asking ourselves are, what are the dollars we're willing to assign or give to an employee? We could call them points or props or bucks or anything we want to, and we can make them worth anything we want to. But when you're, again, I think to answer the question, Peg, you're thinking about it more in a context of what would I be willing to give my top employees across a year in terms of some, bonus discretionary dollars to spend. Am I giving them $50, or $75, $100, $200? What would the top performers get? What would the average performers get? What would the middle performers get? And based on that, multiplied by your population, you're trying to get a sort of total budget. Once you've got a total budget, then you roll it back into the program in some organized structure that says, well, let's make our dollars points, and let's make the points worth a cent each, and let's divvy them up to employees or to managers on a monthly basis or an annual basis, and see what sort of works for your organization and structure. And obviously we'd give you some counsel, but that was just so that we were not confusing. A prop is what Blue Cross Blue Shield has come up with. That's their concept of what the currency is. You'll create your own, what you're thinking about it in terms of what are the real dollars that employees are going to get and what's their buying power. What can they get for it? John, Maria, are you open for some more questions? Sorry, John and Robin, are you open to spend some more? There's more questions that are here. If people want to stay on.
Yeah, that's fine. We can take another one or two.
Okay. So Maria asks, what do you see as a benchmark for a monthly prop recognition? Not entirely there. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not. We don't benchmark it. Again, as Michael was saying, it's an internal program. So really, we're benchmarking against kind of ourselves. So when we started the program, and that's why when John was talking about really looking at trend over time, we didn't really make any assumptions in the first year, really even into the second year of the program, because we wanted to look at the pattern of giving and engagement. So I wouldn't say that we have a benchmark that we're using that says we've got to get to a certain percentage. What we do look at, and you can see in that trend line, where we know that we tend to kind of drop off, we then do a lot more around communication to try to re-engage employees. So as long as it's moving the needle in enterprise employee engagement, that really is the metric that we're using. And then also the dollars to make sure that we're managing the program in the budget that we have. I would say that, as I said to you early on, my pitch to our CFO was that I believed that we could manage the program for less money than what was being spent. When we first funded the program, we had 4,100 employees. We have not increased the cost, the budget for the program, and we're now over 4,700 employees. So I did keep to my commitment, and we believe that we've got metrics to show we've got higher engagement for it. So I think that's really been very positive.
Another question from Felicia. How do you manage that the recognition being given matches the employee's performance?
Yeah, that one is really a great question, and I'll tell you why. Because before we had a way of measuring any recognition that was given, we didn't know who was really getting rewarded, and was that just somebody that was liked in the department? Like, what basis was there? What you find happen, which is really kind of an interesting thing, those people that are rated higher performers tend to be recognized far more often. So again, we give everybody the same equal bucket to give props, but what you find is that it does correlate very closely to people's performance. You don't see that people that are poor performers really getting props, and I think that's indicative of what others see of them. So it has a way of kind of working itself out. So we think it's actually more closely correlated now than it was when, a leader with maybe a very narrow view of, somebody's performance, that they were giving that recognition before.
All right. Well, I know we went over. Again, I guess on behalf of all the attendees on this call, Robin and John, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. With this, as I had indicated, we will, from Online Rewards, send out a thank you and a follow-up with some information for those that might want to learn some more, maybe even with Robin and John's blessing, take a look at the employee and manager's views of their program, the actual site where it lives and breathes. As I mentioned, if there were some things that you'd like to talk directly about Robin and John about, maybe just send me a note and I'll forward that on to Robin and John, and they'll reach out to you directly. And we wish everybody a great early fall weekend. Thanking you again, Robin and John, for your time, and we wish everybody all the best. Thanks for all attending.
Thank you.